Hey, everybody. I'm Tracy Wallace, and I just want to take a couple of minutes to tell you about INE's new Cloud Pass and talk a little bit about what we've got. And I figured I'd start it out with something kind of hopefully useful. Hopefully, it's all useful, but I want to talk about a little bit about what the cloud actually is. So,
and I just want to take
without further ado,
to tell you
one
about
moment.
INE's new Cloud Pass.
The joys of putting things together. Didn't think to actually mute my own mic. There we go. All right, so here we go. Let's start out. We're going to talk about the Cloud Pass. I'm going to talk about the training that we're currently offering for people that are interested in cloud and cloud certification. Okay, and I thought I'd do a quick thing on, what is the cloud, right? Well, if you think about your on-premises environment, and I've got this little bit of a diagram here. We start out with the physical facility. That's your data center, and then you've got your infrastructure, you got your virtualization, your services, your virtual machine services like your web server, your database server, and then finally your workload, right? And so when you're in a physical environment, you're responsible for all of that. You've got the physical facility requirements, cost of space, the actual physical security, the personnel to run it, the HVAC, whatever else. And then you've got, the physical infrastructure for compute. So your power, your network, your racks, and your storage, right? And everything that your blades to actually do the computing, right? Everything that you need there, and that's all you're kind of responsible for. And also the virtualization itself. And I'm assuming that you're probably looking at a virtualized environment. You're working in a virtualized environment. You might not. You might be running on bare metal, but that's a fairly common architecture. And those are all things you're responsible for, and that's before you even get to anything workload related, right? Well, when we look at the cloud, my favorite definition of the cloud is somebody else's computer, right? And that's kind of the easiest way to look at it is you still have all of these same components when you're in cloud, but the difference is that you're not responsible for those lower layers, right? You're not pulling cable, you're not setting up switches, everything is virtualized. And you're really only responsible for your workload and for that which is specific to your workload. And for me, that's really one of the key concepts of, if you will, cloud. Okay. And, there's one thing, of course, and this is really important, particularly when we talk about training, there's kind of snugged in there. There's that management plane, right? Which is just a fancy way of saying the stuff you need to use in order to manage all of this. And every cloud platform, whether it's Azure, whether it's AWS, whether it's Google Cloud, IBM, Oracle, they all have their own management plane. And, that's really when you're learning the cloud, that's kind of the switch between, learning to do things on the data center where you're doing the physical infrastructure, right? Now you're saying, okay, the idea of a virtual machine really is the same. The idea of my workload, that's not changing. It's just I'm trading those kind of bottom parts for learning this management plane. And the idea, of course, is to make that easier for you to reduce the overall workload in terms of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, so you can focus on what's important. You can focus on those top elements. And speaking of those top elements, one of the really common things that you will see when it comes to people talking about clouds is they'll talk about the types of cloud services. Okay, and really it kind of breaks out to where you want to manage and where you want to take advantage of those top three layers, right? Because everything below, really not your responsibility. At the lowest level that you're going to interact with at the cloud service, right? If you think about the virtual machine, you'll hear that referred to as infrastructure as a service. And infrastructure as a service means exactly what it sounds like. It means that Azure or AWS or whoever your cloud provider is providing you all of the physical infrastructure, right? And you're doing everything on top of that. You're defining your virtual machines, you're configuring your virtual machines, you're configuring the workload, you're configuring the services. Now, it's also possible that you might want just the platform as a service. And this is, frankly, where I prefer to live, right? And that's probably coming from a developer background more than an administrator background, is that, I want to be able to just build my workload and say, okay, here's my workload, please host it, right? Whether that's a web app, whether it's an API or a database system, or even some kind of data processing system, right? I just want to be able to say, here's my logic, here's what matters to us, to my company, and host it, right? So host this web app, host this database system, right? You manage the database, cloud provider, I will manage my workload, right? And that's platform as a service, right? Which means that the cloud provider is providing that platform, right? And then kind of at the top of the overall cloud picture, we have software as a service. And that's where the cloud provider is really actually providing the software for the workload, right? And so when you think of things like Microsoft 365, which up until very recently was Office 365, or you think about things like Salesforce, right? That's the actual software, and it's being provided to you as a service. Facebook, where we are right now, right? That is software as a service. And so, you have these terms and they're kind of important to people, but the reality is that, they really just represent where you want to be responsible and where you want the cloud provider to be responsible. Now, there's certain things you'll always be responsible for. You'll always be responsible for data security, regardless of the level. Okay, but those are really the cloud service options. And when you think about these cloud service options, right, what you're really thinking about is saying, okay, as I go down that stack, I have more control. At the infrastructure, I'm controlling everything from the virtual machine up through my workload, right? But you also have ease of administration. When you're, software as a service, you log into Facebook, you log into, Office 365, Microsoft 365. And so that's always a trade-off. Now, the reason I bring this up is because that's a fundamental level of understanding that you need to bring in if you're starting to think about cloud. And I suspect, and I went through this relatively quickly, because I suspect most people that are tuning into this are probably familiar with this, right? But I thought it'd be good to set that groundwork before we start talking about what I really want to talk to you about today, which is the introduction of the INE Cloud Pass. Now, if you're familiar with INE, you know that we have been around for over 16 years, and we have traditionally focused on networking, and specifically, primarily Cisco networking, although we've had other offerings. What we've done over the last year is really look at expanding that, and we've built out some cloud content. And specifically, we've built out some Azure content so far, with much more content to come. Right now, you can get an INE Cloud Pass. That Cloud Pass has over 80 courses, total of over 330 hours of content. We have hands-on tasks, so you can go and you can try out what we're talking about with some guided, simple, easy to do exercises that if you also need the solution, we've got recorded solutions so you can see that. And we've got quiz questions, so you can kind of take a look at how you're doing. And you can get to all of this, and I moved around where I am. Hopefully this is going to come up correctly. Okay, you can get to all of this from our website. We've got a nice little website that I can say that I didn't put it together. So we've got, oh, and I just made it go away. Master of production. There we go. All right. So we've got a page here, and one of the cool things with this page is that it actually goes over things like, okay, what careers, if you're thinking about going into the cloud environment, what careers might you be considering? So cloud software engineer, cloud architect, right? Cloud administrator, cloud developer, right? And so these are all kind of the basic things that you would expect to do. And we've got various certifications. Now, what I want to do next is I want to take a look at where we currently are as far as learning paths. And what we're doing at INE is we're looking to build out learning paths to help you get to the roles that are really important in the cloud. And we're actually doing this across all of our products, but what matters to me is what we're doing with the cloud. And I am responsible for our Azure content. And so I thought we'd take a look at that first, and then also round out the rest of what's coming for Microsoft. Right now, as far as Azure, we've got 3 full learning paths that have been developed and put in production. We've got a fundamentals learning path. So if you're here, say you're an INE customer, but you really haven't even looked at the cloud, this is a great way to get started in that. We also have an Azure administrator. So, again, if you're looking to really do that day-to-day administration, we've got that. That is also already in production. It's there. It's available for you. And we also have an architect, kind of the highest level, expert level learning that we've got. Now, these actually right now align with certifications that you can get from Microsoft. They are not boot camps, they're not certification prep. They are about learning the skills. It just so happens that if you learn those skills and you're interested in taking the exam, they're going to really help you get ready for that. Now, in the yellow, that's a path that is currently in development and would have been done by now, were it not for our current global pandemic. But that's we're getting cranked back up on our production, so we'll have that. And down the road, and they're not here yet, we're looking at having data engineer, also a developer learning path. So this is an area that we have some value, but we're also going to continue to build. We're going to continue to give and really make sure we have the right content for you. And this, I get asked this question a lot. We're going to keep that content up to date. In fact, all 3 of the existing learning paths have been refreshed or are just about finished with that refresh to meet what the current requirements are. So that's the Azure Learning Roadmap. That's what we've got there. We also have in development a Microsoft 365 learning path or roadmap with a number of learning paths. And these learning paths are all currently in development. We don't yet have a delivery date for those, but I certainly will keep folks up to date. I tend to try to announce on my Facebook, or excuse me, on my Twitter feed, as well as our INE marketing folks are really good at getting that word out. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be some extra value that's added to our roadmap overall. And we have content now for Google Cloud. We have some content for AWS, but we're also really working on getting those up at the same level. Now, this is our Cloud Week. This is the introduction to the Cloud Pass. So I'm going to be doing a few things this week you might be interested in. Today is our Facebook Live kickoff, and that's what this is right here. We also, on Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to have some videos coming out talking about, on Tuesday is our webinar on Azure Security Recommendations. Now, this is actually part 2 of a webinar, but even if you didn't go to part 1, feel free to pop in, register, come see the webinar talking about some security things for Azure. If you want to see the previous webinar, it's actually on our YouTube subscription page, so feel free to take a look at that. And then Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to put out some videos, video on Azure fundamentals, what it is, what our learning path is, and some depth. And the same thing on Thursday for our Azure administrator and architect video. And then on Friday, and this is the one that I'm hoping some people come to because this could be really cool. We're going to open up some time and we're just going to do a live Q&A. I'll be online. And I'm not sure that we have that time solid yet, and that's certainly something that's going to be announced, and it'll be coming out in the next day or two. But if you've got some questions about Azure, about Microsoft in general, feel free to do so. And through the magic of electronics, it is actually on Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And tomorrow, if you're interested in the webinar, that webinar will be at 11 a.m. All times that I'm giving you are Eastern Daylight Time. So for reference, it's currently 3:14 my time. All right, so that's what we've got in store. Hopefully this was of some use to you, and look forward to having you come in. Feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in the Cloud Pass. We've got great people. I'd love to help you out. You can reach out to me through INE. Also, if you just go to Tracy Wallace INE on Twitter, that's my Twitter handle. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So thanks a lot for giving some time, and hopefully I'll talk to you again.